Morning, everyone. Just waiting for one or two to join us before we start. So I'll give it a couple of minutes. Just making sure you can all see the screen and so on. If you can't hear me, well, you won't be able to flag it up if you can't hear me, but making sure that you can see the screen anyway. You can see we've got Chloe and Jack on. Just give it another minute, see if anybody else wants to join us. Right, we'll start. So good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's well. Today we're going to be having a look at air quality, which is potentially a big issue facing the property industry. Presented by me. My name's Neil Wood, Senior Business Development Manager here at FCI, part of the Dye and Durham group of companies, and in association today with Conveyancing Data Services and Redbrick Solutions. So thank you very much for coming along today. Or if you're watching the recording, welcome. So we're going to go through a few slides today and a lot of case studies and a lot of industry news material pointing to the prickly subject of air quality, which really is only seemingly reared its head in recent years. And we want to explore how that is affecting us as people and whether we actually want to move to an area affected by it or move away from it. So first of all, we're just going to give an introductory welcome from Conveyancing Data Services and Rebecca Lander, who I've worked in conjunction with for many years now. Using the Redbrick integrated portal, you can access environmental reports through FCI. So FCI are an environmental report provider, so specialising with everything to do with environmental risks, so contaminated land, flood, whether it be HS2 or ground stability issues. And you can get access to those reports through your conveyancing search packs, and they are being offered through Conveyancing Data Services in the Redbrick portal. And as you can see below, Rebecca's got a discounted pack available to you, which contains a regulated local authority report, regulated water and drainage report, and an FCI premium report, which contains full historical land use data, flood data, ground stability, energy, and infrastructure. So it contains all the main data sets that you'll come across on a day-to-day basis, priced at £130. So please give that some consideration. Rebecca can be in touch with you to discuss those needs in a bit more detail. So to give you a little bit of background, if you've not come across FCI before, started in the market in 2014, so 8 years ago now. You may well be familiar with Landmark and Groundsure in the marketplace. FCI came in and asked the market what they liked, what they didn't like about existing environmental reports, and if they had a magic wand, what they would like to change. And so therefore they were a little bit different when they came out. They were a lot smaller than a conventional environmental report, condensed to 10 to 15 pages. We stripped out all the irrelevant information and did something called exception reporting, which means we only reported on the risks that were intrinsically present and relating to that property specifically. So therefore you weren't having to read a lot of empty pages and empty maps. So therefore made your life a lot easier, and ultimately the house purchaser as well. They're more likely to pick it up and read it if it's 10 pages than if it's 50, which was pretty much the norm at the time. We developed something called all-in-one style reports, which the market has suitably followed and copied because it's been such a good idea. You know, so you've got Vista from Groundsure and Ristview Residential from Landmark, which have copied the initial FCI premium, which came into the market. And it's for the greater good of the market that has happened, because now we've got better coverage of information all in one digestible form. Cutting edge data is something all the suppliers will look to do and advance their technologies over time. We're getting things, for example, like better quality overhead imagery through satellite data and planes that are being flown over. So that only enhances the quality of the information that you're getting within our reports. Actionable next steps, that's important. Your client's got to be able to pick up the report, understand what's in it, and understand what to do next if there is a further action to take note of. Today, we're going to be looking at something that doesn't further action because it is further information, really. It's not something that could further action because a lot of the country has got poor air quality. And as you're going to see through some of the news articles we're going to feature today, you'll see why that is the case. So we've got many different people who are at risk from poor air quality. And in recent years, air pollution levels have exceeded the safe EU limits on many occasions, affecting those who are especially sensitive, people who've got respiratory illnesses like asthma, for example. And there's many notorious high-risk areas across the UK, notoriously London, with a combination of high traffic levels and still weather conditions. And it just leads to dangerous exposure to these pollutants in the atmosphere. And there's improved scientific research now on how the fine particulate matter, or PM, can get into the bloodstream. It can even accelerate dementia. So you can see on the screen, it's affecting unborn babies and children with the air pollution connected to premature births, miscarriages, all the way to elderly people who, it can increase the possibility of dementia, attacks of strokes and things of that nature. And as people start reading these news articles and getting a little bit more familiar with it themselves, it will suitably affect the housing market, and it'll dictate prices up or down depending on their reaction to it. It's a little bit like fracking was a few years ago. There was no definitive rule to say if you live near a fracking site, your house price would devalue. That is all down to public perception, and that is exactly what will happen here as well. If the public perceive that living in an area with poor air quality would mean that they would reduce their offer, that is what they'll do. So we're still waiting for those sorts of trends to take place. So what is air pollution? Well, effectively, we're looking at emissions from exhaust as being one of the number one contributors. We've got businesses and chimneys, things of that nature. But really, we're looking at nitrogen dioxide, or NO2, and we're looking at particulate matter. And you might see these referenced in all the articles you come across. So it's looking at the quantity of emissions and how it affects people in densely populated areas more so. City centres are going to be the ones that suffer the most. Going out into more rural communities and rural areas, you're going to suffer a lot less, if at all. So these are the article terminologies to look out for. We've also got sulfur dioxide mentioned on there, and ozone, we know typically is featured heavily in air quality articles. These are some of the historical articles I picked up on from previous presentations I've done. Certainly when Prince Harry and Meghan were tying the knot 4 years ago, there was reported dangerous levels of air pollution in and around Windsor. You've got air pollution being blamed for 1 in 11 deaths, so that's going back 3 or 4 years ago. And poor air quality is arguably the most significant environmental risk for our nation now, with 40,000 deaths a year being reported. That's 110 a day, to give you an idea. Obviously, we're monitoring the COVID figures lately. Just to give you a benchmark, air quality kills 110 a day, so not far off what COVID is doing right now. Attributable all to air pollution, motor vehicles, industry that we've mentioned. So this has been brought into sharp focus, really, with the pandemic. Respiratory vulnerabilities is a key driver of these fatalities. 95%, which is astronomically high, of London's population live in areas that exceeded the World Health Organization's guidelines for the toxic air particles by more than 50%. So you can see the Guardian reporting on that, and that's 4 years ago. So the amount of traffic on the roads is not particularly decreasing. Obviously, it did so in lockdown, and the sort of monitoring that went on there was a dramatic fall. in the amount of particulate matters in the atmosphere, as you would imagine, with people staying at home. Now we're almost back to full capacity, as you've seen in all the headlines. So it was good for a while, but it just goes to show the impact that less vehicles on the road would have. Or if we went to electric vehicles, and you can understand why the government's got a big push towards electric vehicles in the next 10 or 20 years, where they imagine we'll all be driving them. So more headlines now that I've found. This is in Bloomberg. Air pollution kills far more people than COVID ever will, and that's from last year. And in the Independent, you've got London's air pollution worse than Beijing as smoke chokes the UK capital. So given that we're now spending much more time at home now, air quality is quickly becoming one of those critical factors where we do decide whether that's where we want to live or not. And looking in FCI's reports, we put air quality as a data set available in every single residential report, no extra charge. And as you can see, it features as a note, not a further action. And it's on the front page quite clearly under the map. And it's also a feature within the report as well. So if I blow that up a little bit, you can see it. So featured in the environmental section at the beginning of the report, you can see we're talking about nitrogen dioxide there and particulate matter, which is what we were referring to a few slides ago that I told you to remember. So when you pick up a report, you actually understand it. So you can see I picked an area here near the M42, so it's a motorway with a lot of emissions, just to show you how pixelated the reports are. It's quite granular. So you can see it ranges from polluted to some polluted in this location. But if there was a more rural village a bit further off the reported area, there'd be no pollution at all. And there's a sliding scale that we make on the right-hand side with a rating of 5, which is basically saying it's polluted, and purple. A lot of inner city areas of London are very heavily polluted and will appear purple. And so it's a big consideration on whether you want to move your family to these sorts of locations. And we've got some really sad stories appearing in the news now. So you've got the girl on the left-hand side, Ella, there, and on the right as well, actually. Ella, who suffered from asthma, and she walked to school every day along the South Circular Road. She was the first child to declare air pollution as a contributory cause to her death after a high court judgment. So that was extremely unfortunate and the first of its kind in this country. So as we as consumers choose to buy homes, we'll be increasingly influenced by air quality data and traffic. But choosing schools can be the biggest determinant for young families as well. The first consideration is squeezing into the catchment, which can attract a premium. But obviously we're susceptible to poor air quality, and maybe that is a deciphering quality that you need to understand a little bit more. Children can breathe in up to 3 times more air relative to their weight. So this makes it a greater volume of air getting into their lungs, which could be compromised by air quality and respiratory diseases. So I found an article that was very sort of similar to that, and backpacks with air sensors are helping reduce emissions around schools, because the way that air quality is monitored, they strap devices to lampposts and traffic lights and things like that at roadsides and major traffic intersections, and that captures the particulate matter being emitted by those exhausts. And they take it back to the laboratory and scrape them and then test them and look at the density of the air quality and the particulate matters that have been stuck to it. And similarly around schools, you'll see children with air monitoring backpacks on. They want to make it safe for their environment. And you're going to start to see a lot of articles about this. So this is one only from 2 or 3 months ago, November 2021, you can see there. And this is from the Evening Standard newspaper. So there was a recent project done where London pupils were fitted with backpacks monitoring how toxic the air was in and around their schools, and encouraging children to walk to school rather than parents keep dropping them off. And there was a lot of interesting conclusions that were made. Parents were quite shocked with how much the air quality was affected by driving the children to school, even within their car. So I would expect more and more articles like this to start coming out in the next few months. Again, trawling through the web, you can find numerous different articles. One from Asthma UK, you can see they're campaigning for clearer air, as you would imagine, reducing the risk of asthma attacks and stopping people with asthma having to worry about it. You've got articles like this one in The Guardian featuring in London there, location, lung disease. Pollution advert targeting the property market, making people aware of the toxic air London buyers and renters are breathing in. So the public are getting a big interest in this as time progresses. You've got details here on motorway speed limits being cut in and around the major motorways we've got in this country. So you've got the M1 and M6, two of the most popular ones, reducing motorway speeds because it's the stop-starting of traffic that causes all these emissions to fly out in the air. If you keep traffic moving, albeit at a slow, steady pace, the amount of contaminants coming out the exhaust diminishes. And that is why you see all these matrix signs saying 50 miles an hour, sometimes when there's no traffic actually on the road. And that is because lots of towns and cities have got air quality targets to meet. They will leave that on up to an hour after the rush hour is finished in order to let all these emissions dispense into the air. And that's maybe why you've seen it. So this is an article, again, from less than a year ago, showing what the intentions are for the government to try and tackle this big issue. And again, this one appeared on my Facebook, actually, on the left-hand side, BBC Northwest, talking about clean air zones. And these are things moving into cities all over the country now that are going to start charging daily for vehicles coming into the city centres in order to discourage them. So a bit like the congestion charge in London, if you like. So Greater Manchester's started with a clean air zone and aims to push forward with that this year. And you can go to their websites and understand what their mission is and what they hope to achieve by doing it. There's several cities now getting on board with one of these clean air zones. So I've highlighted these for you. So you can see we've got them in Bath, Birmingham, Portsmouth, Bradford, and Greater Manchester. And these are the starting sort of 5 we've got at the moment. And you can see they've all got a different class. So we've got class B, C, and D mentioned there. And that's all down to the vehicle class types at the bottom of that screen on the left, which can come into the city and expect to be charged. So you've got Portsmouth, who've got the least amount of vehicles, ranging to Birmingham, who've got the most. So Birmingham, we've got everything from buses, coaches, taxis, private hire vehicles, heavy goods vehicles, cars, motorcycles potentially as well. So it's pretty much everything. Whereas Bath stops one short of that and allows cars in at the moment. But you can see on the right-hand side, you've got an opportunity to check your vehicle's emissions to understand whether you would be charged going into one of these clean air zones. And this is going to be something I think will end up in most major cities across the country. And how is that going to affect who wants to live there, or importantly, do people want to move out from there? So I thought I'd have a look at Bath in a little bit more detail, actually, and just see where their cleaner air zone was. And it covers quite an extent when you look at it on the map there. So you can see it's starting to talk about penalty charge notices if you do come in and don't pay your fine. So it looks like the charge, you can see in the middle of the article, talking about CAS charge there, either £9 or 100, depending on your vehicle type. If it's a minimum of £9, it's a lot of money if you're doing that on a day-to-day basis. I know it's not including cars at this stage, but it's a lot of money. If you're living in a city centre like Manchester or Bath or Birmingham, and you've got friends and relatives that want to visit, it will put them off having to spend nearly £10 every time they do that. And it would discourage people from wanting to live there, I'm sure. So some of the articles I've found. So according to the Central Office for Public Interest, property prices could plummet in the most polluted areas as a result of home buyers being able to check the air pollution levels. So areas like Chelsea could be crunched by £250,000, they estimate. The price plummet estimates following findings that a resounding 76% of Londoners would expect some discount to be applied to properties available to rent or buy in areas that breach these limits of air pollution. So that's one side of it. And then you've got the estate agents. They're legally obliged to declare material issues that could affect the price of a house to a buyer. The current legal argument about air pollution goes that it isn't a material issue, so it doesn't need to be flagged to buyers. But this argument just doesn't hold up when we know that the disease-related mortality increases in areas of significant air pollution. This needs to be addressed, and I am urging estate agents to lead the change and begin sharing air pollution ratings with potential buyers. This is going to be an industry standard. It is inevitable. And that is from Mark Haywood. And he's from the National Association of Estate Agents. So you can see where the market is leaning to. So the next few months and years, we're going to see a complete transition. So we're ahead of the curve at the moment, but right at the beginning of its acceleration, I would imagine. So again, another expert comment. The Telegraph report has naturally been dissected by property experts, most of whom take the view that the trend of checking out air pollution when looking for a prospective new home is set to continue and will shortly become the norm. Henry Pryor, an eminent housing market commentator, said that in the past, his clients were rather blasé about environmental questions. Times have changed, though. He adds that home buyers are now aware that pollution can vary between homes, even at opposite ends of a street, and they want to know which has the cleaner air, and they won't hesitate to adjust their offer for a property accordingly. In his experience, a poor rating can reduce a property selling price by up to 15%. Mr. Pryor states that he's now routinely checking for air pollution, and it is a recommendation. So there you go. And in terms of FCI's product suite, where you can find air quality information in every one of them, you've got the full suite there, ranging from essential to the premium plus planning. The only difference is the content sets within. So you can see the left-hand side, environmental is your contaminated land and flood. And if you want to add ground stability, energy and infrastructure or planning, you would choose a different report accordingly. All cover up to 1 hectare. So that's 99.something% of all residential properties covered without having to go into a separate banding. If you do have larger properties that you look after, the premium plus planning goes up to 5 hectares as a start. There's no screening products, so choose the product that you want your client to receive information on. We don't upsell, so you're not going to find references to product sets that you didn't expect within the report in the first place. And you will get a professional opinion on all of those key topic areas. So one report that I want to flag up, which is slightly different, is the FCI Retail report, which covers all shops on the high street and town and city centres. So anything that you can see on the screen. So it might be coffee bars, it could be nightclubs or pubs, restaurants, post offices, building societies, places of that nature, bed and breakfast, houses in multiple occupation, anything that's sort of drifted out of the remit of residential, or if you've got a hairdresser's with a property above it, things like that. This report is very, very useful. The reason I mention it is air quality is included within an FCI Retail as well. So if you wanted a purchase of a coffee shop, let's say, you'd maybe want to know what the air quality is like outside that shop so that your customers aren't breathing in poor air quality. So this report covers up to 0.25 hectares, about a third of a rugby pitch, and it covers contaminated land, flood and ground stability. And it also comes in red text there with a remediation warranty, which all our reports do for residential, and this is the first one that ever has done for a commercial property. And what it means is if we pass the report, like you can see on the screen there, and it turns out within 6 years the land is actually contaminated, there's a funny smell or things aren't growing, for example, then if we can't pin the blame on the original causer of that pollution or the developer, for example, our warranty will cover the replenishment of all those soils with good soil up to £100,000 worth of excavation costs. That's a guarantee. And it's the first time in a commercial transaction that has been the case. So a really good feature of that report. So that's what 0.25 hectares looks like I say, about a third of a football pitch. So you'd fit most things on the high street in there, even like a small Tesco's with 5 or 6 car park spaces should fit in there comfortably. And as you can see on the front of the report, you've got the air quality feature underneath the mapping there, so you can advise your clients accordingly, especially like I mentioned for those transactions where you've maybe got a coffee bar or a restaurant with outside seating, that you can advise them on accordingly. So that's it for today. So thank you very much for listening to the presentation. If there's anything that you want to ask, you can get in touch with us. My email address is neil.wood@dydurham.com, and I'll be happy to help you. Further to today, Rebecca Lander will get in touch with you and discuss your search pack requirements. So please make use of those discounted rates for your Redbrick integration. Wishing you all the best and hope to see you very soon. Thank you very much.